This is Zach Gelb with the Sports Minute. We all know Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey. However, with that being said, anything short of winning the Stanley Cup this year will be a failure. McDavid does have 5 assists in 3 games in the Stanley Cup final, but has 0 goals and his Oilers are now down 2-1. And as one of the most talented players ever put on skates, McDavid really needs to get going tonight and lead his team to victory, because if Edmonton goes down 3-1, it will inevitably lead to the Panthers hoisting the cup right in McDavid's face for a second year in a row. I'm Zach Gelb.
If Twisted Tea was your best friend, they'd start a dance party in the supermarket that turns into a pool party at your place, and you don't even own a pool. Twisted Tea is smooth, refreshing, and always fun. Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Keep it twisted.
Twisted Tea Brewing Company, Cincinnati, Ohio. Please drink responsibly. Hey, listen to this. All it needed was a new starter. Got a great deal on eBay. Did it myself.
Yeah, that's cool. But how about the soft purr of an upgraded exhaust when it fits just right?
For me, it's the little things, like these new windshield wipers from eBay I installed.
From small fixes to big upgrades, eBay has all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You could think you found your dream home online, but here's the twist. The lot next door just got rezoned for use of construction. Work with the expertise and ethical training of a Realtor, here to guide and help protect you from the surprises you didn't see coming. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Get more at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Get the best selection with more Hondas, more Hyundais, all your favorite makes and models. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now. That's way more than any other dealer in the area. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume all in one location on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with financing options for every budget. We finance your future, not your past. You're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. Get more with straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Over 900 vehicles on the lot ready to choose from. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
So you're going to find fewer people in the world than me, or I don't know what the grammatically correct way is, but whatever. You're going to find fewer people in the world than I am who are as anti-big government and as pro-freedom of choice. By and large, one of my theories on life is, and I have my biblically based principles, but I don't exactly trust elected officials. I'm not going to call them leaders, but elected officials to be the ones that should be helping design the laws that they're probably going to violate and break because of their own vices and personal wishes, although they'll stay in power because it's best for their own interests. So anyway, on that note, as I probably already turned off half the listeners here in the fast lane, when it comes to the world of sports betting, I'm pro-choice. If you can find a way to do it responsibly, fantastic. If not, there are ways to help. There are plenty of things that I don't believe in when it comes to sports betting. I think when you try to have an 8-team parlay, yes, I'm going to beep that word out because it's ridiculous. Just bet 8 straight bets. You have a better chance of making money, but people get so disillusioned that they want to go with the 8-team parlay and think that's the best value for them, even though the household on that is ridiculous. You know, for example, a 3-team parlay, 3-team parlay should realistically be about 8-to-1 odds, but you're getting it for like 6-to-1. So you're getting ripped off. People do it anyway because they're so enamored with the gaudy numbers that are out there. But here's the thing. If that's what you want to do, it's a free country. I mean, heck, we got commercials running for the Virginia lottery. Somehow some people think that's okay, even though it's more random, versus sports betting, where at least if you study this, you might know what's going on. But I digress. The point that's really grinded my gears right now is a recent survey amongst Major League Baseball players from The Athletic. And there are a lot of things that are on that site that are interesting. College football coverage is great. NASCAR, of course, fantastic. And plenty of good feature pieces. I'm not one to really get into a lot of the other stuff. I don't care about a lot that's going on in certain leagues or with other teams, but there are parts to it that I get. But I don't know about UTJ. One of the things I do enjoy is when they put these random, like, coach executive polls or player polls together in all the 4 major sports leagues, or like the anonymous recruits who will dish on how NIL is working, how much they're offered, where programs. Like, I find that stuff fascinating when people will spew information under the condition of anonymity. And there's certain people in like the fandom world where they automatically dismiss it because they're not going to put their name to it. Really? I mean, have you ever understood how this works? Like, in fact, sometimes when people don't put their name to it, trust me, I might know more than, like, God love him, but my dad sometimes, who, like, it's not authorized. Well, look, the thing is, understand how the games play. Like, maybe I know something about this, having done it for like 20 years, just perhaps. But when I look at it in the world of those anonymous player surveys, I find it fascinating. And the most telling one for me that came out is that in a recent poll from theathletic.com, and this is just Major League Baseball players, although if you follow the player polls for football, for hockey, and for basketball, NFL, NBA, NHL, there are similar leanings that sports betting has created a real I'm owed something mindset of fans towards players. And where I believe I'm owed something as a fan just personally is, give me your best effort. Like, give me your best effort, preparation-wise and performance. But it's not to hit a certain total of 3-pointers made in basketball, or hits accrued in baseball, or shot attempts in hockey, or yards completed in football. Like, to me, it doesn't work like that. And if you think that way, you need to rethink your relationship with sports betting out there. Full disclosure, by the way, here in the Fast Lane, we carry VSiN content right after the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle. That show is from 7 to 8. But right after it is VSiN by the books, Vegas Stats and Information Network. Literally, it's a sports betting network. And then right after ours, it's VSiN's Make It Rain with Adam Shine. So full disclosure, we have it. But so many media outlets have partnerships with sports betting that's out there. If anything, I will say this. I think a lot of what you get on VSiN beats the heck out of the bro culture, the machismo that's out there in sports betting. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, TJ, you can tell me if you're wrong. To me, VSiN, and again, I'm biased. We've carried it. I've had to study more about it to determine shows that may or may not fit from them to mesh with our Virginia Talk Radio Network and VTR and sports offerings. But a lot of that is actually people that know how to bet responsibly. Like, they may bet large amounts. They may do it for a living. But a lot of those audience members are more of the betting response. Like, they're tuning in there to be more educated. And there's a difference. Now, Grant, there's some bleed over, but there's a difference between that and, I'm just going to single them out here, but like the barstool type culture that's out there, the bro culture, where, again, nothing wrong with that in certain doses, but know what you're getting out of that. And that's why it was harrowing for me. This survey from theathletic.com, TJ, 78% of players responded yes to the question. Has legalized sports betting changed how fans treat you or your teammates? 78%. That's basically 4/5 of the respondents.
And
I was saying 80%. I mean, it's a narrow enough. And they didn't elaborate on how they treat you differently, but I'll give you some insight based on a lot of different quotes. It doesn't mean they're getting treated better because they have sports bets in the game. Like, it's just not. And a lot of times fans lose their ever-loving mind. And some of them, again, it's the I want to bet a 3-team parlay or a 3-leg parlay, which the books tout because they make so much money off of it. Of course, they're going to promote an offering where they can rip you off. Like, people don't understand how that works. And again, if you want to do that anyway and you know you're being ripped off, go for it. Again, pro-choice, free country. I'm very much so in that. But, I mean, really? Like, come on. No, at least know what you're doing.
No. I agree. I think it's important. I find myself, I'm not a betting man, Ed, not right now, but I find myself listening to those shows on the Virginia Talk Radio Network, especially Adam Shine, when I'm driving back home, I keep the radio on and I listen to that show.
Well, and I do too. And again, there's a lot that I don't bet on, but I listen to it because it still helps inform me. And if you're talking about like presented from more of an educational as opposed to a, hey, follow me and know the 5-star lock of the century out here.
Yep, I hear it on Barstool all the time. Pardon my take, one of my favorite shows. Those guys do it all the time. But
and part of this is like there's this idea in, again, there's nothing wrong. Barstool has done great with this, and they're very gifted at it. Opinionated commentary. There's an audience for it. They do a fantastic job of that. I know I'm promoting somebody else in that regard, but it's the difference between being informed and opinionated. I'll go back to like the news type stuff. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. To me, they're all the same thing. I know if you're a diehard Republican or a diehard Democrat, you're going to come at me with your pitchforks. Please do, if you want to at least virtually do it, Fastlane, Edlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But those are the same thing to me. And it's the same culture, which is know what you're getting when you're watching those 3 networks for news. Know what you're getting when you're tuning into Embrace debate shows on TV. Your Skip Bayless's, your Stephen A's, your whomever, or your Barstool. Like, there's nothing wrong with consuming it. But understand that that's more opinionated commentary as opposed to information and nuance based. And as long as you know that and they market itself, I'm fine with that. It's just when people can't decipher between the two, they tune to it, they get bad advice, they place a bet, the bet loses, and then they act like morons by making threats to players or asking them for money.
yeah, they don't attack the people that gave them that recommendation. They go and attack guys like Kevin Durant all the time on Twitter when he doesn't hit their parlay. And of course, Kevin Durant makes it interesting because he'll respond. And I love watching it all the time. But
with his own or his burner accounts.
Yeah, with this. He doesn't even have burner accounts. He just straight up goes on his Twitter page now and just tells it how it is. It's like, buddy, I don't care about your parlay. I went 7 for 15 today. I had a good day today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't either if I'm a player. First of all, a lot of these, like let's call it what it is. That's loser behavior out there. Like if you're threatening a player or you owe me money because how the hell, pardon my language here, but how in the world, how in the Sam Hill, my mom loved that one. It's kind of like a replacement for that. How in the Sam Hill is it the fault of the player that you made the bet? Like it goes back to when we had Drew Dinsick on in the fast lane yesterday or last week, and we played the soundbite yesterday about like Arena Sabalenka getting upset, and he's like, she didn't, the coaches didn't hit the stupid shot. She did. Well, you know what? The player didn't intentionally screw up your bet. You made the bad bet. Like it's responsible betting. Like responsible betting. If you can't do it, rethink your relationship with sports betting. Like that is a must. And go ahead.
You're gonna see irresponsible betting now that ESPN has their own betting line now.
Oh, for sure.
Stephen A. Smith has his own line. Greeny has his own line. Molly herself has her own line. Everyone's gonna follow that of ESPN or Barstool instead of what the radio talk people say, or even Drew Dinsick, who's been doing this for a long time and knows perfectly what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and again, full disclosure, we carry Vegas Stats and Information Network programming, VSIN, here on the Virginia Talk Radio Network and VTR in Sports. We have sports handicappers on regularly. I'd like to think they're discerning sports handicappers as opposed to the hot take opinionated people. So there's nuance to the discussion. I know in this day and age, that doesn't sell. It's not as fun as getting people hyped and enraged and then acting out. And then, by the way, being shocked that people are hyped and enraged and then they act like morons because they're hyped and enraged. Like you're literally stoking the fire of the emotion. It's like smoking at the gas station. I mean, literally, like it's kind of, what you're getting with that.
And Ed, players already have enough time when they do bad and get death threats because your favorite team lost. Now you're taking it out on Jalen Reagor for dropping a wide open ball, for example. The kicker for the Bears that missed that field goal in the playoffs against the Eagles when they had their best season, arguably.
But those are good points. Again, I am all for like just booing the player. Like that comes with the territory. You buy, you boo. It's expressing yourself.
Exactly.
But when it gets carried over into the death threats or the you owe me money, that's a problem. Like
exactly.
I've gotten to the point where like at games you can have security footage of people. Again, this goes back to me being like I'm very anti big government involvement. I'm very pro-choice. You can choose and bet responsibly if you know what you're doing. Like it's hard, but you can learn and bet responsibly. And if you make bad bets, understand that ultimately you made the bet. It wasn't the athlete that was out to screw you. If you think that, you have a problem. We need to rethink this. But let's go a step further. If you go to the point where you're making social media threats or sending PayPal or Venmo requests to athletes demanding that they pay you money, if we have the ability to utilize cell phone mapping and tracking what happens on social media platforms, even from, quote, burner accounts, end quote, let's just get the government involved. Like, I get it. They have a lot of problems going on. For more on all those problems, the Virginia's Talk Station app and 100.9 FM WIQO in Lynchburg. You can check that out. But when you're talking about endangering other people, this is where I am in favor of let's use law enforcement. Let's track this down. Let's expose these people and start pressing charges against them for this behavior. If you start to do that, even from burner, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, whatever accounts, or from social media platforms, Twitter or Instagram or wherever, if you start tracking them down, even from burner accounts, and you can find out who the originator of that content actually is with cell phone records and all of that information, start arresting people, it'll stop. And the whole, is that too harsh? I use this analogy a lot. Now, sometimes I get criticized with it, but sometimes I think it's justified. Like sometimes I'm a little harsh punishment-wise with my kids, but it's to set a precedent. The point of the punishment and the threat of the punishment is to deter you from committing the crime. Because if you're enforcing it, then
will not be deterred,
as Melissa McCarthy would remind us. And instead, those who
will not be deterred
are the people who have
lots of power.
They should be the ones that flex as opposed to these fans and let them know that they do not have
lots of power,
as Melissa McCarthy would remind us. And at some point, this has to end. And this is how you put a stop to this is you start tracking down the behavior, burner accounts, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, whatever, and start making it a punishable legal offense where all of a sudden these people have to lawyer up. That's going to cost them a lot of
dollar bills, y'all.
They're going to have to be exposed, which means their bosses and the people with whom they work will start to know about this because this becomes court-related records. And because of all of that, you might lose jobs. It may be harder to get jobs. You may have, violent predatory behavior that is at least on your record, even as difficult as it might be to actually prosecute that. If you start going down that road, this stuff is going to get curbed a lot faster. And I'm not big government. I am very much pro-choice, but I am also pro consequences meshing up with the crime and putting this out there. And again, I don't like the government getting involved in everything, but if people can't behave themselves and it's starting to become threatening behavior, then that's where the government or law enforcement agencies, in my eyes, should get involved and say, the buck stops here. And maybe I'm off my rocker by saying that. If you think I am, Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, come at me. Don't come at TJ_Wilkerson8. He's not the one getting on this high horse like I am. But it crystallized the idea for me. I am not a stop sports betting. Leagues are never going to do it anyway. They've already got too much of a financial commitment to that. This is not going to happen. And again, I think there are plenty of fans out there who do this responsibly and can handle themselves in that regard. Or even if they struggle with making the right sports bets, they can at least have the common decency and civility and knowledge to know it's my fault, not the player or the coach's fault. So don't take it out. But for the ones that do, that's where the punishment needs to fit the crime.
Yeah, I heavily agree. I think if we start punishing those who threaten athletes to the point of an athlete fearing their life or falling out of the love for sport, I think this whole situation gets better. I mean, like you said, there's accountability. You have to have accountability when it comes to betting your money that you decided to bet.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, again, it goes back to the idea of personal accountability and finding a way to implement that and say, when things don't go your way, you're going to be personally held accountable. But it's fascinating because the Athletic survey that came out about players, 78% say that sports betting has changed the way fans interact with them. And the whole write-up, the majority of it is not positive interaction. Again, reporting this behavior to security at Major League Baseball or the NBA or the NFL or the NHL, that's one step. But then that being turned over to law enforcement agencies and all of a sudden that information being exposed and having the ability to say, hey, social media apps, if you're going to function in this country, you got to cough this information up. If you're money requesting apps in this country, cough the information up if it's in this particular manner because there's threatening behavior and we need it. Again, I know it's a slippery slope. I don't pretend to be a legal expert out there. If this is your domain, by the way, Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at gmail.com. And we'd love to partner with you and you can provide your insight on this. But in the meantime, There's got to be a better way to handle this behavior than just the, hey, we're going to report it and then nothing ever changes. If people realize I threaten, I make ridiculous requests and demand money, and all of a sudden I'm going to be outed, that stuff's going to change real quickly. So, like, again, one last analogy to wrap it up, and then we'll get to Tom Bowles of FrenchStretch.com in a moment. But I got a friend of mine who's in furniture sales and fabrics, furniture, something of that nature. Lives down in North Carolina. The tutor, by the way, the tutor, the infamous one we've referenced in the Fast Lane, who took 7 years to graduate from Alabama, but he helped tutor the Nick Saban football program during its heyday. So get to laugh about all that. He was just so good at his job, they wanted to keep him around. Not completely. But, he's very good at sales, extremely gifted. And he's gone over to Saudi Arabia and the UAE in the Middle East. And he says when he goes to the bathroom there, he just leaves his motel room keys, rental car keys, his wallet, including cash and cards, just on the table. Because over there, if you steal that stuff, that hand gets chopped off. And in America, oh, that's too harsh. Oh, that's terrible. You know what? It reduces it. The threat of the punishment reduces the crime. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. Like in America, if all of a sudden you're going to lose your hand because you're thieving and stealing, boy, that's going to cut that down, even if you got an addiction problem. Like, voila, here we go. I sound old school and harsh, but I don't steal stuff. I don't steal money from people. I'm not going to rob you, so I don't have to worry about that. If that's your lifestyle or behavior or your choices, hey, that's your problem, not mine. But I would be in favor of that. It's the same thing here. Start outing these people for their behavior in sports betting and start tracking them down and punishing them and then letting that information be known to who their boss is and putting legal requests and legal compliance issues in front of them, or having to go to court and all of a sudden your public record gets dinged up. I mean, hey, you made the choice. You couldn't do it responsibly. And don't tell me alcohol or drugs were involved. Well, if that's the case, maybe you shouldn't be doing that and using your phone to place bets. Just saying that's not responsible either. I am all for that. Meanwhile, we're going to move off of this and get to responsible viewership of the Dale Earnhardt documentary. Speaking of psychological discussions, Tom Bowles of FrontStretch.com has a fascinating article on the Dale Earnhardt Sr. documentary. My wife and I have started watching this. But, with 2 6.5-year-old boys, they'll turn 7 in about a month. So way over 6.5. But 2 almost 7-year-old boys, it's hard to watch things in succession at dinner. So we watch in spurts. So we're like halfway through the first episode and we started watching it like 3 weeks ago because we have like 3 other shows and we just watch things incrementally as time allows. We're going to be gone in a couple of weeks, actually. Maybe we'll actually be able to catch up on this. But in the meantime, we are watching some of it. It's fascinating. Tom Bowles has seen it all. He'll weigh in on why this is so captivating and why it's at the top of Amazon's list of most watched shows. Next, this is the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports.
When you're a discerning gun owner, you value knowledge and honesty. That's what you'll get at Big Boys Guns. With over a decade serving Central and Southwest Virginia, we make the complex easy. Our team experience can help with firearm transfers and 100% electronic process for silencer ownership that is done in-house. And when you know firearms, you know it's honest. That's why we offer accurate appraisals and low prices.
Summer's here. Are you still trying to figure out how to balance work with the kids being out of school? Take them to Rise Up Climbing. With camps going all summer long from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., your kids will burn energy, have fun, and learn some new skills like building strength and overcoming obstacles. Plus, the only week without camp is the week of Independence Day, June 30th through July 4th. So rise up and climb above the summer obstacle. Visit riseupclimbing.com for camp details or drop by and see them on Church Street.
When planning a summer trip, you probably have a checklist. So if you're driving, here's a safety checklist. If you see flashing lights on the side of the road, slow down and move over. If you're in an accident and can move off the road, try to find a safe spot like a parking lot. And if you're on the shoulder, it helps to have your flashers on. Just some friendly tips from our family at TROSLAW. We hope you never need us, but if you do, we're here to help at 777-HURT and TROSLAW.com.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right choice.
The Black Crows, Mount Joy, Government Mule, JJ Gray and Mofro. Need us to continue? Paul Cawthon, the California Honey Drops, Future Birds. And that's just a handful of acts performing at Floyd Fest 25 Aurora, July 23rd through 27th at Festival Park in Floyd. 7-time winner of the Best Music Festival, Floyd Fest features 100 artists on 7 stages over 5 days with outdoor adventure, camping, and family fun. Grab your tickets now at floydfest.com. Don't miss out on the music, magic, and mountains. Visit floydfest.com to secure tickets to Floyd Fest 25 Aurora today. Put the fun in your meal at Kodo Japanese Steakhouse, where everybody gets a free meal on their birthday. Kodo Japanese Steakhouse, Wards Road in Lynchburg.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
So as most of you know, I've always been a Dale Earnhardt Sr. fan. You know, one of the reasons that got me into NASCAR growing up, I loved Bobby Labonte because he had the green car with Joe Gibbs Racing. And green's my favorite color, and the green and black combo is really cool. But the other is Dale Earnhardt Sr. Genuine, charismatic, a guy that really put that on display for people to see. But there's a complexity and an old schoolness to him as well. And some of that's great in racing. Some of that also kind of resonates with me. Like, I look at my family dynamics, and as generations have progressed and as time has gone on, even with my father, and I love my dad to death, but he's softened up as he's gotten older. Now, he can still be firm when he needs to with me and with my kids, but, you know, how he handles my grandkids, and there are times where I go, really? It's, you know, probably firmer and nicer than how his dad handled us, my grandfather. My dad may brush back on it, but, like, I remember what I remember. And, you know, in the same thing, you know, how my dad handled us. And I get some of that's like, he's dad, and now I'm a grown-up, so how he treats me is different, and how, you know, grandparents treat their grandkids is different from how they just treat their kids when they're kids. So I get that. But that's part of it with the whole Dale Earnhardt Sr. documentary, because, you know, one of the things that seems to have jumped out early for me, and Tom Bowles of FrontStretch.com is with us now. He is joining us now and has seen the whole thing. It takes us an eternity to get through these documentaries, Tom, because with twin, almost 7-year-old boys, everything is start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. But it's the Ralph Earnhardt seemed to be really not there was not a lot of emotional quotient. The EQ level was non-existent. Dale Sr., for a while, it seemed like it was. And the cruel thing is, once he seemed to start to figure it out, particularly with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and maybe to a lesser extent Kelly Earnhardt, that's when he passed away. And Dale Earnhardt Sr., Jr., and you know, you listen to him now and certainly hear how he's been. It seems like he's kind of been the one who's undergone the transformation to try to change that generational flow within his family tree. And it does, to an extent, mirror mine. So that's also part of the fascination. And again, that goes along with me just being a Dale Earnhardt Sr. fan now and both growing up. But you've had a chance to see this documentary and write about it. And one of the best articles, and you've had a lot of great ones in your Did You Notice columns at frontstretch.com, Tom. But first of all, thank you for joining us in the Fast Lane. Second of all, you mentioned grief being part of the Dale Sr. documentary and why the appeal of it is. How much of it is also the fact that the way that family lineage seems like it is portrayed in the documentary, that people can resonate with that, particularly in the NASCAR community, and even more so the fact that because he was taken so soon, you didn't really get to see how this could play out over the long haul.
So a couple of things. You said a lot there. I think that Dale Jr. was always different from both Ralph Earnhardt and Dale Sr. And I think that's such a big part of the documentary, right? The rise of Dale Jr. and how different he was, and how his dad initially, I don't think, could relate to it until Dale Jr. started racing. I thought that was a really interesting part of it. And, you know, it is just really tragic that for Jr., it was this moment that he finally was able to connect with his father and finally start building that family relationship. His father gets taken from him, and his father gets taken from him in public in the worst possible way. And then all of a sudden, it's one thing to have your father die like that. It's another for 5 to 7, many more millions of fans immediately turn and say, "You're my guy, and I want you to grieve with me." That's very, very difficult. And a real focus in the documentary is very well done in terms of how you deal with that situation. That I can't even imagine what he was going through during those months after Dale Sr.'s death.
There's so many angles to that. And you mentioned the crux point of everything with Dale Earnhardt Sr., his death, and then how everything was heaped upon Junior. We can get to the Dale Jr. dynamic in just a moment. But Dale Earnhardt Sr., how much of his appeal is the fact that, he transcends generations to the point where old school people still relate to Dale Earnhardt Sr., and he's been gone from us for a quarter of a century now.
Yeah, I think old school NASCAR fans forget that there are 25-year-olds right now that have never seen Dale Sr. race. And you've got to be really over 30 at this point to remember some parts of Dale Sr.'s career. And it's really good to introduce this story to all of those people. But for the generation above that generation, Gen Z and young millennials, Dale Sr. was everything. And he just remains such an iconic part of the sport, in part because I don't think we've ever had someone remotely like him come by since. You look at Carson Hocevar and some of the stuff we're talking about with Carson the last couple of weeks, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what Dale Sr. used to do and the intimidation that the garage area felt from him every single week. And I think that's why people relate to it and people miss it because they never got it fully replaced.
The suddenness with which it all happened. And like you mentioned, Tom, the Dale Earnhardt Sr. death was sudden. It was in front. There was, things have changed now. Knowing what we know, it didn't look as severe in the moment. And now everyone knows about, basically it's whiplash, which is what caused them. And it's almost like it changed the entire game and dynamic about this. But you've written about the documentary, The Power of Grief in particular. How much of this is also the fact that NASCAR has changed a ton and was on the cusp of changing even with Dale Earnhardt Sr. But when he passed away, it almost seemed like it accelerated. And this takes people back. Dale Earnhardt Sr., the documentary on him on Amazon Prime, takes Dale Sr. back and fans back to a time when things seemed like they were much more simple, even if they weren't.
I think there's something to that. I think there's something for longtime fans still yearning for Earnhardt, like we just talked about. They're reliving a time where everything felt simpler, where everything around NASCAR was really positive. The growth was explosive. Dale Earnhardt died in the first race that Fox ever televised for NASCAR. And it was such a big deal for NASCAR to have a national contract where the majority of the races were on network television, all 36 races, where you knew who the TV partners were and you knew where you were going to watch it. So I think people yearned for that. I also think that we look back on things sometimes and we think that they're simpler than they really are. And certainly there were problems and people were complaining about the restrictor plate races, the drafting races in 2000, just like they complain about them in 2025. So sometimes, we look through rose-colored glasses, but I think you make a point.
Tom, you mentioned the rose-colored glasses angle to things with Dale Earnhardt Sr. and then the heaping of all of the 5 to 7 million fans from Dale Earnhardt Sr. on to Dale Earnhardt Jr. This is where I get to ask the question that has been one of my crux points for an eternity. Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans, a lot of them are fans of Dale Jr. because of Dale Sr., and they view Dale Earnhardt Jr. for who they wish he was and his connection to the man that they loved, as opposed to who Dale Earnhardt Jr. is, which is someone passionate about NASCAR and racing as a sport, but maybe not the win-at-all-cost mindset of Dale Sr.
Well, two very different personalities, two very different results, right? And Dale Sr. leaned into his Intimidator brand. Dale Sr. understood the power that he was getting in the garage area and understood how his aggression was winning him races. Dale Jr., I would have loved to see a world where Dale Jr. played out his entire career with his father still alive, and what it would have been a DEI and what results they would have gotten. Remember, Michael Waltrip's win was just the third ever for DEI, I believe, third, fourth in that range. And they were still just getting established as a Cup team the same way that Dale Jr. was getting established in his Cup career. And with Earnhardt's leadership behind the scenes, who knows what would have happened there? Maybe Dale Jr. has a lot more wins, maybe even has a championship, because he's not spending a large portion of his career grieving. And I think that was one thing that the documentary missed, Ed, is there was a lot of grief the years after Dale Sr.'s death where Dale Jr. was winless for a long period of time with Hendrick. Dale Jr. really was searching for meaning in his life until he found his current wife, Amy. And like that revolutionized not only his way of thinking, but that brought back, some momentum to his racing career really late in the game when he found the support of a loving woman that he ended up marrying and having a great family with. And so it would have been, I'd be curious to have seen an alternate reality play out with Dale Sr. living and Dale Jr. running out his whole career. He would have probably won a lot more races, in my opinion. And I don't doubt he would be a Cup champion, potentially with DEI.
It's amazing. And of course, the fracturing of DEI and now the fact that JR Motorsports exists, and they're not in Cup, but they're, the top Xfinity Series Chevrolet operation in NASCAR's version of AAA is Tom Bowles of frontstretch.com is hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. A lot of our discussion today is his great article on the Dale Earnhardt Sr. documentary on Amazon Prime. We have linked up the article, by the way, at Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter, and we commented on that earlier today. It is a really strong article from Tom Bowles. You mentioned that, and I mean, I know the reputation of Dale Earnhardt Jr. before he met Amy as well, and a lot of it was kind of partying, maybe took that side of things to be more of his focus as opposed to what it was as a driver, and their infamous stories of the cases of Budweiser when he was sponsored by them and how quickly he went through all of that and that whole ordeal. How much of that is, grieving of Dale Earnhardt Jr.? How much of it is trying to find purpose in what he wanted as opposed to what the Dale Earnhardt Sr. fans who gravitated towards him wanted?
That's a good question. I think Dale Jr. finds his own purpose, and it didn't always match up with what the fans wanted. At the same time, I think that anybody that was a Dale Sr. fan that gravitated to Dale Jr. was looking to grab on to any little bit of Dale Sr. that they could find, that they could remember, that they could relate to. And I think that Dale Jr. just living, breathing in a race car at times was enough for them. So I know that's a little bit of a muddled answer, but Dale Jr., I think, has found his voice in the last decade, and his voice is an emotionally available, really good media personality that is able to bring the best out in people around him and bring out secrets in people that don't otherwise spill those secrets. I mean, he's such a great podcaster, and he's been able to, turn that emotional availability into something. And that's just so different from who his father was. The type of conversations that go on in the Dale Jr. download, I feel like would never happen in Dale Sr.'s universe. There'd be a quiet hunting trip, or there'd be a very man-to-man conversation where you don't go in depth about your feelings or in depth about something that happened. And so, that's to his credit. It's just very different. And I think Dale Sr. fans really had a transition period relating to that because it wasn't the man that they initially followed.
Well, I mean, you bring up that interesting point. My dad has done a lot to open up, and his dad, I don't think I ever really saw my dad's dad open up. I've seen my dad open up himself as he's evolved. And again, having two grandkids now, my two 6.5-year-old boys have helped open my dad up in an emotional way that it has taken him years to get to that particular point. And it's awesome to see as a son. And, kind of there are times where you're like, where was this for back in the day? Dale Jr. obviously never gets that experience because his dad is no longer around. But you referenced Dale Earnhardt Jr. and who he is. How much of the Dale Jr. popularity now is due to the fact that he has a unique ability from kind of having been a party guy, still young at heart in a lot of ways, that relates to still younger fans who never even saw Dale Sr. race, but also because of his name, because he's still got some old school persona and the way he carries himself, he also can relate to the older NASCAR fan. And Dale Jr. is kind of the ultimate bridge of generations from way back in the day versus or maybe with the modern fan now.
He is a bridge between generations. And the question is, how do we get the new generation to follow the sport? I think that's what Dale Jr. through his media career is working on doing. And the new generation is very different than the generation that followed in Dale Sr.'s time. So it's not like you just go back to a Dale Earnhardt 1995 version and the fans are magically going to come back, right? There has to be some sort of modern version of that. Maybe that's who Carson Hocevar is trying to be. Maybe that's who Ross Chastain is trying to be. That we'll see what happens over time. But it's great to have Dale Jr. still around in the sport and have him as an asset. And even though he's not on the racetrack, I think what he does behind the camera and on his podcast helps so much in keeping an older generation of fans that may not be fully enamored with the way the racing is right now with the new car or some of the new drivers that they may not relate to, fully involved in the sport and seeing the positive aspects of the sport that they still love rather than focus on the negative aspects that they may not like anymore.
How much of that is also tied into, and we're chatting with Tom Bowles of frontstretch.com. He's at NASCAR Bulls on Twitter, and we'll get to, Mexico and the race and some big news that just broke about that in a moment. But how much of the Dale Earnhardt Jr. appeal to fans, and particularly older fans, is also tied to the fact that when Dale Sr. left us, it was also on the cusp of that timeline where NASCAR abandoned the South. They got out of Rockingham, got out of North Wilkesboro. They shrunk Darlington to one race date. There were questions about the value of places like Martinsville. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. has advocated for those to the point where he's championed the return of Rockingham for the Xfinity and Truck Series this year. He did so much to bring back North Wilkesboro, and he's been a champion of those areas where, again, old school fans can feel that level of connection that even though he's Dale Jr., not Dale Sr., he kind of gets it, if you will, in terms of what those fans really want.
Yeah, I think that there's truth to him understanding what the old school fans want, but it's a different world and you're not going to be able to fully go back to it. And there's nostalgia for what was, right? There's nostalgia for all the great races in the 90s and the early 2000s when the sport was exploding. But for the sport to evolve now, it needs to evolve differently. And so, yes, Dale Jr.'s presence and Dale Jr. gives us a link, but it's also not the answer. The answer is a combination of keeping those old school fans in the loop while finding new school fans that relate to the racing that we're going to have in the future, right? 10 years down the road, we're going to have more hybrid and electric cars. How does NASCAR deal with that? How does NASCAR get more manufacturers on board? We just got a great announcement on Sunday about Dodge entering the sport once again. Cup cars in 27 or 28. Great young personalities. I think the biggest thing the sport misses that is not a Dale Jr. thing, but more of a Dale Sr. thing is blue collar, by my bootstraps. I fought through the short tracks of the Southeast and the late model series and worked my way up from ARCA and Trucks and Xfinity to get where I am. And that was the big time connection to the South, right? Now it's a lot of my daddy has money, and so I was able to get a ride. And that's not as relatable to a whole bunch of blue collar people that work really hard and want to see that effort to get an athlete where they're supposed to be, not see somebody parachuted into a race car like they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother can of worms for NASCAR tackling that and where you're going with NASCAR. Maybe we'll get into that as we pivot away from the great article at frontstretch.com. Dale Earnhardt still leaves everyone grieving. Tom Bowles wrote it yesterday. Link is up, Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter, and Tom has been discussing that today. If you missed any of that, Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tom, NASCAR, they head to Mexico City this coming weekend. They are there without Denny Hamlin within the last 10 minutes. The news coming down that he will miss the race in Mexico City, apply for a waiver, which you would think will be accepted, and therefore it won't jeopardize his status for the playoffs. Ryan Truex is in for Hamlin, though, in Mexico City. How big is this, particularly for Ryan Truex getting an opportunity that he normally would not get?
Huge for Ryan Truex. It's the biggest opportunity of his career. And it's with a team that just won. So I don't think he can slot into a better spot. Certainly the expectations are high. But for Ryan Truex, we haven't really heard much from his brother since the Daytona 500, right? Martin Truex Jr. has been, out of the sport as he promised. And so Ryan needs to stand on his own 2 feet if he wants to have an opportunity long-term to stay in this sport, to get back full-time in the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, or anywhere else. He's been dabbling a little bit, limited schedule, made the choice to have a few races with a high-profile team rather than run full-time for lower-tier teams. He's been there, done that. But we can see how these races can sometimes quickly lead to bigger opportunities or potentially knock you out forever. I go back to Justin Allgaier, and when he filled in for Jimmy Johnson, do you remember that all those years ago? And it didn't go very well during COVID. I wonder if that was the nail in the coffin, as much as Allgaier's an amazing driver, for any Cup guys or Cup owners to look at him and go, you're Cup material. So Ryan's got, I would say, a make or break moment this weekend in Mexico City. I hope he makes the most of it.
It'd be fun to see if he does. When you're looking at favorites this weekend, Shane Van Gisbergen is one of them. He's been great on all these road courses. He's at the top of the odds board. Do you look to the other teammates, particularly Christopher Bell, and where else are you turning, Tom, in terms of drivers that could contend for victories this coming weekend at Mexico City?
I'm definitely looking to guys like Christopher Bell. I'm also looking to somebody like Tyler Reddick, right? Tyler Reddick has yet to win this year, was really good at road courses in the beginning of the next gen era. 2311 has been embroiled in all this distraction with the lawsuit and all these other things going on. I feel like he's someone people might have started overlooking. This guy was in the championship 4 last year. I think he's somebody that's going to do really well. I think you can't count out a guy like AJ Allmendinger and colleague. When they go down there, they're going to feel like they are a contender every time AJ steps behind the wheel of a Cup car on a road course. And then I look at somebody like Chase Elliott, who has not been mentioned on road courses all that much lately, but Chase Elliott's basically had a 3-year winless streak of sorts. Only one race win, since the end of 2022. It hasn't been that great. So he's somebody that this used to be his track type. I know he struggled in the next gen on road courses. Certainly not as strong as he was with the old car, but Hendrick's going to give him top level of equipment, and he and maybe even Alex Bowman might be unexpected contenders this weekend.
Last one, Tom. What needs to happen this weekend for NASCAR in Mexico to be deemed a successful weekend for NASCAR?
Really competitive racing, no incidents at the racetrack or outside the racetrack, a positive experience for both race fans and race teams alike. And I think we'll end up back there. I actually do. Remember, Mexico City was on the Xfinity schedule for several years in the late 2000s. I don't necessarily think this is a one-year deal. You hear the rumors about IndyCar looking at it for 2026 and beyond. I definitely think that if done right, we could see Mexico on the schedule for years to come, especially with a sport that wants to expand a little bit internationally.
One step of many. The big one this weekend. Tom, we appreciate your time. Thank you, by the way, also for your candid article at frontstretch.com on why nobody from Front Stretch is going to be down there. We do not hold that against you. We know the insight is fantastic regardless. And when these blips pop up on the schedule that make it challenging, look, I've been in sports media long enough to know that it's not always easy to pull off the great coverage that you guys do. We appreciate it regardless. And we encourage you to you guys keep doing the great coverage you're doing because we love supporting it.
Thank you so much. And, if anybody wants to, we rolled out a new donation subscriber model today. If anybody's interested in learning more, anybody's interested in donating to help keep the coverage going, obviously the economy is not as great as it was just 6 months ago. So, we could use your help in making sure that we make it to the racetrack and, create the quality coverage that all the fans enjoy.
We enjoy it. Tom, thank you for sharing some of that today in the Fast Lane. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. Tom Bowles with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, overdue Fast Five at 5-ish and a little bit of fan feedback to wrap up this week. We're off for another week because no shows Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for the College World Series. Next Thursday is Juneteenth. So in observance of that day, no edition of the Fast Lane. So we got a while to go. We got a lot to cover when we return here in the Fast Lane.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Have you looked at your home's exterior lately? Do you see faded siding, paint peeling, and wood rotting, windows that are impossible to open and close, and gutters falling off? Call Collins Siding and Windows to transform your home's exterior and save you money on energy costs. Dreaming of a new porch or sunroom? Collins can do that too. Since 1989, Collins Siding and Windows has been transforming homes in Central Virginia. Roofs, windows, siding, gutters, porches, decks, and sunrooms. They can do it all. Call Collins Siding and Windows today, 434-525-6307.
Moving into senior living shouldn't be stressful. Thursday, June 12th, Runkin Pratt Liberty Ridge hosts Senior Living Simplified, a free resource and vendor luncheon. Enjoy lunch, meet experts in downsizing, in home care, real estate, and more, and hear guest speaker Robert Dawson explain the step-by-step path from home to community. Seats go fast. RSVP now at 434-610-0332 or email info@runkinpratt.com. Make the move with confidence. June 12th at Liberty Ridge.
Big Boys Guns can thankfully say we serve Central and Southwest Virginia as we've done for over a decade. We've learned some people know exactly what they want, while some prefer a helping hand. That's why our staff won't judge your knowledge. We're just excited to greet you and help you in finding that perfect firearm or accessory, because everyone is at a different stage of responsible gun ownership. Our advice is free, and we even have concealed carry classes. When you're ready for responsible gun ownership, come see us. Big Boys Guns on Route 4.
Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? That's right, playoffs. The Lynchburg Hillcats and Carolina Mudcats battle for first place in their series at Bank of the James Stadium this week. With only 1 week before a playoff spot is determined, the winner of this series will have the upper hand on a postseason berth. With a Pirate Flag giveaway on Friday, a hat giveaway and fireworks show on Saturday, and a Father's Day lawnmower raffle on Sunday, there are no excuses to not be at the ballpark this week. Help your Hillcats make the playoffs by purchasing your tickets today at lynchburg-hillcats.com.
This summer, you could go to the pool over and over and over. Or you could scuba dive in an aquarium, a lake, or the ocean for some of the most majestic views imaginable. I'm Chuck with Aquatrek Adventures. Our Try Scuba classes are a perfect way to help you decide if you're ready for scuba certification. When you are, we have classes that can get you certified in just a few days. Your next adventure awaits at Aquatrek Adventures, 30 Mill Lane in Salem, and online at aquatrekadventures.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I need this soundbite, by the way, from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Carlton Banks. So much to do, so little time. So now it's time for the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
TJ.
Yes.
How excited are you to get back over to City Stadium for the next couple of days?
I'm very excited for it.
That's because yesterday, Luis Mejero, 2 solo home runs, including a big one in the 6th inning. Hillcats beat Carolina 3-2. They now have a 1-game lead for first place in the Carolina League first half standings. Yeah. And if they're able to hold on or maybe even lengthen that lead up, they will clinch a playoff berth, even if players get called up. This is pretty big. And, I get it. There are a lot of times where minor league baseball players, and ultimately a lot of these guys still want to move on. That's their top goal. But I'm amazed they're backing it up, how tight these games have been recently over the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, it's very important. If you win the next 2, you've won. You've won the series. So the next couple games are very important, especially tonight.
It's a chance for you, by the way, to go even further in on that, TJ, by hyping up the crowd as the PA announcer. Which nights, by the way, are you there at City Stadium? Is it tomorrow and Saturday?
It's Friday and Sunday.
Friday and Sunday to go out and cheer every time the PA announcer says something. And to do it for less, get your tickets now with the $10 food voucher at InsaneRadioDeals.com, where you don't pay full price. You get special deals on everything listed at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Now, you knew this one was a matter of time, TJ. A group of women's sports athletes have filed an appeal of House versus NCAA settlement, arguing that it violates Title IX gender equality because more money could be diverted to football and men's basketball than the other sports. This is the clash of from economics versus what I'd like to see as a supporter of women's athletics. From economics, football probably should get the most money because it generates the most schools, but most everything else is a losing proposition, even men's basketball in a lot of cases. It's football that brings in a lot of the economic resources from TV, not even just the gate, although you can make that back from TV. But I do see a challenge that's right here, and it's one of those, again, blame the NCAA for not asking for leadership or having leadership to think this thing through until now.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a topic of conversation, especially now you got to think of sports like field hockey, women's gymnastics, and so forth. I mean, what are they going to get in all this, in all honesty?
Yeah, it's one of the many questions, and another that we get to address in number 3. Because U.S. Representatives Lisa McClain, Republican Michigan, and Janelle Bynum, Democrat Oregon, earlier this week, introduced a bill that comes shortly after Representatives Gus Bilirakis, am I getting that right? Florida Republican, and Brett Guthrie, Kentucky Republican, circulated a discussion draft of a bill that would largely put into federal law the new terms and rulemaking structure, not necessarily from the House settlement itself, but from the College Sports Commission that's been put out there. In theory, I like this, and it's a great idea. I have concerns, big ones about this, and I don't pretend to be a legal expert. Does it get through the Senate? You've got the House that's advocating for it. What about the Senate? Again, I don't tend to know enough about that. What about the president? Would he sign off on this? Depends on who's influencing it. 3 Republicans boost the chances of that. Does it hold up in the Supreme Court? Again, I have no knowledge of whether it would. And if all of those happen, will there still be bagmen under the table anyway to get the best players to universities? Because that one, to me, is just going to be brought back to being in vogue with this. Until you get, again, back to our point at the beginning of the fast lane, the punishment has to deter you from committing the crime. You have to have the big conferences, including Notre Dame, committed to some kind of enforcement arm that would basically punish schools for using bagmen to circumvent this type of rule. If you're not committed to that, other than the federal government just flat out getting involved and then threatening to revoke like tax exemption status or federal funding too, we'll just throw big state universities out here. Ohio State, Michigan, LSU, Florida, we could keep going. If the government threatens that, then okay, this is serious enough. But if that's not the case, where are we really going with this type of news and development? Meanwhile,
number 2,
the Washington Commanders have announced a plan to utilize the concourses and premium spaces inside the proposed roof stadium in Washington, D.C. proper to meet the goal of 200-plus nights of activation each year. This, according to the Washington Business Journal. The team is looking to schedule about 20 major events each year and beyond the 10 home football games, 2 preseason, 8 regular season, guaranteed in the new stadium. This is what you have to do. You have to try to find a way to put on Republican and Democratic conventions. Things like WrestleMania, men's and women's basketball Final Four, international soccer matches, all of these other things that could potentially come to a place like Washington, D.C. That's how you're going to get this a little bit further down the tracks than where you've gone previously for the Washington Commanders to enact this stadium. Meanwhile,
number 1,
NASCAR and Flow Sports said they would contribute an extra $50,000 to the purse of the late model Stock Car Virginia Triple Crown, with races beginning at South Boston, then Langley Speedway, and then wrapping up in the fall with the 300 lap event at Martinsville Speedway. Look, I'd say this is positive that NASCAR backs late model racing enough to put their money where their mouth is. Alex Hayden of the Motor Racing Network opined on this earlier this week in the Fast Lane. Fastlane Headline, wherever you listen to podcasts. But for a sport in NASCAR that's been criticized for trying to go international, I love the idea that there is enough of an embracing of local grassroots racing that NASCAR wants to go about supporting that in addition to everything else that they have done. And I really am a fan of seeing that development in NASCAR. Meanwhile, it is overdue, but time to go to a little fan feedback here in the Fast Lane.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, it's time for fan feedback in the Fastlane.
So we're going to table Michael's points on Brian O'Connor and Carla Williams and UVA because that will still be more relevant. Meanwhile, we'll probably be on to Wimbledon by the time we get back to the fast lane. But Jace chimed in on the Sinner Alcaraz precedent from how Carlos came back and won. I think Carlos has the mental edge over Sinner on a go-forward basis, said Jace. Because of this final, even on hard courts, Sinner had match points and still lost. That's tough. Rafael Nadal was in Federer's head for years, especially on clay, and it affected hard court performances again, so just keep that in mind going forward. Even Federer overcame the mental hurdle and won their last 5 matches on hard courts, but could never get the best of Nadal on clay, which is the power of mental reality. I think it's a great point because in tennis, it's you, their coach is interacting with you now, but still it's you versus your opponent in a way that exists in far few other sports, where in other sports, the volume of timeouts. A reminder, no show tomorrow through next Thursday, College World Series in Juneteenth. We're back next Friday, 5 to 6. Thanks for listening to The Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.